The opening round of Super GT has now come to a close, with the teams packing up from the race at Motegi and heading off to Germany and the Nurburgring. Just a few short weeks after the F1 circus leaves the Grand Prix circuit of the famed Nurburgring, Formula Forza's Super GT monsters arrive to stir up some more excitement this weekend. The race is just around the corner, and there are plenty of details to go over since the last race. We'll be covering the action that went down at the Twin Ring, as well as this weekend's predictions and a few team changes. It's time for the Formula Forza Pre-Race Podcast by JET Motorsport.
Hello and welcome. I am your host, Derek James, aka Magnum278, and I'm joined as usual by my brother, Brad James, gamertag WennaJ, and Ryan McDowell, gamertag Siphon68. We had our first race of the Super GT season this weekend at Motegi. Quite exciting, a lot of stuff we could get into real quick, but first, Brad, can we go over the qualifying results and the stuff that happened while qualifying was going on?
With pole in GT500, FMS Senna with a 1:17.676, nearly a second ahead of the second place driver, FMS Top Secret. In GT300, In Flames got the pole with a 1:28.446, a tenth of a second ahead of second place qualifier, RRUK Shadow. Now, we did have 3 disqualifications, 2 in GT500 and 1 in GT300. XPR Overdrive failed to use second gear, so then he would be moved down to a 7, but he ended up not making the race, so that was just completely taken out of the order. And Chicken McHaggard also failed to use second gear, so then he was moved down 1 position to B8. And Red J in Lobby A, qualified 14th, had an illegal setup along with his teammate, the Wacky Wombat. They both used illegal setups and had to be moved back. Red J 1 position, and the Wacky Wombat qualified last, so he didn't move anywhere.
All right. Thank you, Brad. Ryan, can you go into our race recap / the results of the first round this weekend? Make it exciting, please. Brad, that was incredibly boring.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take us into that. The first thing I want to say is FMS Senna, props to him for that pole position, his first of his Formula Forza career, and the first for JET Motorsport, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, guys?
Yes, that is correct, Ryan. Pretty momentous occasion for us.
Awesome. All right, so then, FMS Senna did not get out-qualified this time. In fact, he just totally clobbered a Subway cookie and, actually, FMS Top Secret, and we already covered that. But anyway, as the race started, we saw Senna just pull away and then just continue from there. And GT500 was really a story of a runaway for FMS Senna at the end of the race, 33 seconds, and he never lost the lead. So just incredible driving from FMS Senna. Subway Cookie and FMS Top Secret, though, had a pretty good battle in GT500. We did have TLR Eclipse lag out of the race. We did have Mr. Dr. Spaceman and XPR Overdrive not show up to the race, so that meant there were only 5 GT500 cars starting the race in Group A. So a bit of breathing room for the GT300s then, but it was good for Senna. And other than the very close battle between Subway Cookie and Top Secret, which in the end Subway Cookie was able to get around Top Secret and secure second for BTR. That was really good stuff for them. But pretty exciting all in all in Group A for GT500. In GT500 Group B, we saw a really exciting battle pretty much throughout the entire race. There were 10 cars in there. There's supposed to be 8, but there were 2 open spots due to non-qualified GT300. So we did call up, Austin and Enfeen from Forza Fanatic Racing. So those 2 guys got a chance to compete with us, and while it was a little crazy in GT500, sort of the first race of the season, no matter what we're doing, is kind of crazy. In GT300, we had a really good battle. Right off the line, we saw In Flames fall back several positions from starting on pole. We saw him fall back several positions to 4th, letting RUK Shadow, BTR McNish, and Johnny Two Shoes ahead of him. and spent basically the rest of the race trying to catch those guys up. And if you watch the race footage, you see him really applying pressure to the guys behind him, but you see the strength of those Nissans and the Weissman. You saw the power of those cars really on the straights. You saw them pull away, so you saw In Flames have to stay really close to him until those straights and try and stay as close as he possibly can and then make it in the corners, and that's exactly what he did. Just wasn't able to make up time on RUK Shadow. Interestingly enough, he was not able to get into the 128s during the race. May have had something to do with why he was having troubles catching RUK Shadow there at the end. But other than that, we did see a pretty good battle there between ZX Squid and Godass. That was a pretty good one between the Weissman and the McLaren. And then at the back we saw MFR Speedy and WennaJ do their best to finish on the lead lap there. And I have to say, coming in with kind of these broad expectations, we really didn't know what was going to happen in the GT300 race. I have to say that the first event went pretty well. In Group B, the GT300 race was a little underpopulated, and really the biggest thing we saw in there, a pretty good battle between Hypnotic Foil and Scurry 76 over their respective positions. But we saw Scurry 76 rather pick up first in Group B with Hypnotic Foil second. WRC Cape was third. XY101 finishing just behind that. Dawaki Wombat then coming last in Group B. So yeah, a pretty good race all around. We did have some incidents with contact in GT500 that was brought to our attention. Looked like a late brake maneuver into Turn 1, Lap 1 from Slamont that is currently under investigation. We're taking a look at whether that was negligent braking or rather just a racing incident. But really, other than that, it was just sort of race incident contacts that we saw in GT500. Guys with adrenaline flowing, kind of making brushing contact here and there. There was a rear ending between Rock Lewis S. and Chicken McHaggard, which hasn't been brought to the stewards, but we saw it in the replay. It's just interesting to see. I'm sure the pressure they're feeling in the first race to do well is quite high. So, we kind of expect a few more of these in the first race than we would sort of later on in the season. People getting their feet under them, trying to figure out what these cars are capable of in braking and acceleration. But anyway, in GT300 then we saw Dawaki Wombat, several inquiries launched against him for sort of erratic driving, not letting the GT500s through, that sort of thing, and that is under investigation right now, and I can say as of this point, it looks like we'll be asking Sunday Racing to replace Dawaki Wombat as a driver. It just doesn't look like he quite has full control of the car at this point. He was blocking GT500 cars. He got in several contact scenarios that were ultimately deemed his problem. Like he went off track and then came back on running into other drivers. So that's not something we like to see a whole lot. But when it does happen, we want to make sure that the rest of our drivers are protected from sort of hazards on track. So WennaJ 55 has his work cut out for him to find a new driver, and he's expressed his interest to respect the wishes of the league and do everything he possibly can to keep a clean name and come through this on top. So yeah, it was a pretty good race. If you watched it, it was rather exciting. What did you guys think of that race?
As a first live broadcast for us, if you guys didn't watch it, we did our first. It was kind of flying by the seat of our pants, kind of spur of the moment, like, hey, we should actually live broadcast this, as we are live commentating. Might as well put it out there for everybody to watch. So if you did watch it then, it was actually pretty exciting for us to watch. So that battle, man, Flames and McNish, yeah, that was really something. Brad, actually, we are moving on to you. Could you give us the how the points turned out for both classes and for teams and drivers, please?
As per usual, I'm going to be running down the top 5 per class. for GT500 in first with 120 points because he did get pole and won the race, FMS Senna. In second with 86 points, a Subway Cookie. In third, 11 points behind him, that would be FMS Top Secret. In fourth, Bloody Kane with 68 points. And in fifth, Smitty Lad, 46 with 62 points. Moving on to GT300, we have In Flames with the second place finish and pole with 105 points in first. 4 points behind him are UK Shadow. In third, we have BTR McNish. Fourth, Johnny Two Shoes. And fifth, ZX Squid. So what we're going to do now is we have some team news to talk about, guys. Some changing drivers and stuff. So let's get into that.
Ryan, do you care to take us a little deeper into that information?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk first about driver changes. We had Moon Tower 1 subbing in for XPR Roadrunner on Serpent Racing and GT500, so we expect to see him come back into the driver's seat, which could rattle the cage a little bit. He is a very strong driver, and with 2 Acuras, predicted to be towards the front of the grid, that should be very interesting for Group A. We do expect to see Overdrive back, which will make a very interesting Group A race as well. The SC430 should do well at Nurburgring, but we'll get to predictions here in just a minute. The other interesting driver change is that for AF Corsa in GT300, the loss of the Boulin Wall. He is going to be committed to other race series, so he's asked that his place be sort of given to somebody else. So Killin Mac Daddy 2 is going to take his place on the AF Corsa squad next to In Flames. So we'll see how that turns out. We know he did attend the test. He was rather quick. We'll have to see how he does in the seat for them. There does look to be possibly some teams coming in. If S&P doesn't make it back and if Python Motorsports doesn't make it back, we will be eligible to accept 2 more teams if they don't make it to the next race. We already know about Sunday Racing having to replace the Wacky Wombat, but Matty Muldoon, their normal driver, won't be back for the next race. So perhaps they're just going to find another reserve driver until Matty Muldoon can come back. For let's see, Team Endless Taizan, we'll have to see whether Tom625 will make it back or not, but we do know that Midnight Performance Development in their Weissman, they are currently talking about a car change, which is pretty big news considering they're leading the GT300 Team Championship. Initial thoughts on that is that they might be going to a McLaren. Man, I don't know that that's really the right call for those guys. I mean, they were able to extract a lot out of that Weissman. I really think that we already have a lot of McLarens on the grid. I'd really like to see them in one of the other cars. The GT300 does have a lot of diversity, or it could have a lot of diversity, but yet we've got 3 teams in the McLaren, and we've also got 3 teams in Ferrari, 2 of them in the F40. So I really thought we would see more diversity in the field, but it just hasn't worked out that way. Not sure where Midnight Performance Development is going to go. You guys want to wager a guess on what cars you think they should go with?
I really think they should go with possibly the Ferrari. If they really
Which Ferrari?
Yeah, F40. Or they might go for the McLaren, but I mean, it's kind of hard to speculate when you have a whole game's worth of cars nearly to choose from. They might come way out of the water and be like, "We're driving a Prius."
That's not legal.
Brad, what do you think? What car do you think they should choose? Not which one do you think they will choose. What do you think they should choose?
To be honest, there's out of the cars that people are using right now, McLaren and Nissan and Ferrari. Those weren't my top picks. My top picks were the Ascari, which is what I think they should choose. Would be the Ascari. They could work well with that car, because they could do wonders with tuning. So I think that's the car they should choose. Is the what's it? I don't know what the exact car is called, but brand is called Ascari, and there's only one car in the game, so...
Yeah, I think it's the KZ1R.
Something to that nature.
So I screwed it up.
If you had a second pick, what do you think they should choose, Brad?
The Zonda?
Yeah, it's I hate to say it, but if I was going to suggest, that would probably be my 1 and 2 pick, but I'd have them flip flopped. I'd have the Zonda as my number 1 pick, the Ascari as my number 2, and then my number 3 would probably be that, if they have it, because of I believe it's a VIP/DLC car, is the Lamborghini LP 570-4 Superleggera. That car in testing is just wickedly good. We already have so many cars already, or so many teams that already have the McLaren. I would really like to see some diversity here, especially when they're on such an even playing field. But it is kind of a shock to see them go for this this car change after they're leading. And what I mean by that is Formula Forza has had a stance that if you want to change your car, that's acceptable. There are rules that bind that, and if you do, you lose all your points to that point in the season, which we're only one race in, but they are leading the championship, and the Weissman is already considered to be, not that bad of a car. Not as bad as we initially thought when we did the podcast a week ago. But they also need to pay half the buy-in to be able to switch cars. So we're talking about 2.5 million credits also going into the kitty just for them to change cars and go back to 0. So it's kind of a bold move to do that. But who knows? I guess if ever there was a spot to take that hit, it would be right now after the first race.
Another team to talk about actually would be Forza Fanatic Racing. They actually changed cars as well. Actually, 2 hours left in qualifying, they changed from the Nissan R35 Skyline to the Toyota Supra. So they changed that, and then they didn't qualify as well as we would have hoped to. Both of them, I don't think they made the race, but they got moved up into Lobby B due to open spots. So that was, I think, all of the team changes. So we're going to go ahead and move into predictions here for Nurburgring.
The Nurburgring is going to be a very interesting race. This is going to be the Recaro Short Ring, and let's see, we got 30 laps on this track. All the races are estimated for about 45 minutes race time for the GT300s, which should make for about a 40 to 41 minute race for the GT500s. We'll have to see how this works out. I think it's going to be a little bit quicker than the last race because of that long straight, and our preseason average at 133 lap time for the GT300s I think is going to be a little bit high. I think we're going to see some teams lower than that, actually, maybe even brushing the 130 mark. We'll have to see how that works out come qualifying in I guess for us as we broadcast this, just a couple of days. But yeah, we got 30 laps on here. Qualifying does start on Wednesday night at midnight for Eastern Standard. I guess that'd be Thursday morning exactly. So we'll have to see how that works out. I do think that in GT500, nobody's even close to FMS Senna at the current moment. They're going to have to figure out what he's done. He's kind of a wizard when it comes to these GT500 cars. It's like nobody else is even in the same ballpark as FMS Senna. So we'll have to see. Maybe since he did win that race, he's going to have a grid penalty of 7 positions. So we'll have to see how he copes with that. But yeah, it's going to be a very...
He'd have to get pole to be in Group A.
Well, no, he really just has to qualify top 7 to stay in Group A, because it cannot push you into a lower group. He'll just start with... if he qualifies on pole,
yeah, sure,
he will start actually behind the entire GT300 grid, and then he will have a 1-second grid penalty. He has 7 places to give up, but if he starts on pole, he can only give up 6 positions in class, and then he's got to start behind the GT300s with a 1-second grid penalty. So the best he can do at this moment is grab pole again and have the 1-second penalty. Now, that does mean that the Subway Cookie needs to be second in class if he doesn't want to start back there with a 1-second penalty, just like FMS Senna. So we'll have to see how that works out for him. He may just start at the back of the GT500 grid with no grid penalty, which will be a huge advantage to not have to waste the couple of first laps trying to get around the tightly bunched GT300s. But this will be the first gauge for us whether our grid penalty system needs tweaking or what. But we've committed that we're going to go 3 races before we truly review the grid penalty system to see how that works and whether it needs adjusting or whatnot. I'm slightly worried that it's not going to be enough. That FMS Senna, he finished the last race 33 seconds ahead of Subway Cookie. So, is a 1 second grid penalty and starting at the back, is that going to be enough? I'm not really sure. I think he can still win this race at the Nurburgring Short. What do you guys think about this?
I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, I can't really elaborate much on it. You kind of covered all the bases there, but I mean, there's really not much I could move into it a little bit. Kind of.
All right. Well, then, how about this, Brad? How about you kick us off on analysis for GT300? How do you think that's going to evolve in this next race?
I feel like it's going to have a lot. I mean, like you said, it's going to have a lot more to do with the race, the outcome in GT500 because in lobby A at least because of the grid penalties. So if there are cars in GT500 starting behind GT300, they're going to affect obviously they're going to affect what happens more than they would if there weren't any cars starting behind him. So, and you can't really just in GT500 force your way through the field. You got to wait for your opportunity to do stuff. So, that'll affect the race more.
Are we starting from our normal back Formula One grid, Ryan, this week? Because that might have something to do with it.
Yes, we are starting from the F1 grid, not the normal Forza grid.
All right. So, if you think about it, since we're starting on the F1 grid this week, there is theoretically enough room before the first corner for the say Senna with his 7-spot grid penalty to be able to make it past the GT300 cars before the first corner. So, I mean, if you think about it, he could get a better start because he will get a better start than those cars and make it past him before the first corner.
But he does have a 1 second penalty if he does start behind him. So that time to pass all those cars before the first corner is dramatically shortened by the first corner by that 1 second. So he might not even do it to be able to get past. He might be able to get past like a few, but not the whole field.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's gonna be difficult. He won't be able to. I don't think he'll be able to overtake the entire field. If he does, that's good for him. Bad for the rest of the GT500 grid.
It really depends on on the start how much the GT300 field spreads across the racetrack. If they stay pretty tight, I feel like he could just take one lane all the way through. But the track here is pretty wide, at least in the front straight. So there's a lot of room for those cars to move apart. So if they spread across the whole racetrack, he's going to have a lot of trouble getting through the field.
Well, if you think about it, in R1, we had actually had it 4 wide into the first corner. So, I mean, if you think about it, if the racing is as intense as it is with R1, they're definitely going to be spreading out because the start is usually the only time these guys are going to be able to get around each other because they may have to settle in for later. So there's always going to be jockeying at the start here because it's such a wide track.
I think he just needs to... If he starts behind him, he just needs to take his time.
Totally agreed. Now, the one thing that we generally have issues with here is people trying to, like you said, fan way out. And one start we had we had 5 cars go wide, or 5 cars wide, and we saw one go into the grass. And that generally is just asking for a collision, so we'll have to see and encourage drivers, take it easy. We saw that collision with Slamont in the Group B there, running into the back of FW Mastodon, who then ran into the back of Rock Lewis S. So we'll have to see what happens with this, but really we got to start laying down the law if there's going to be a lot of lap 1 collisions like this. It's going to result in penalty. So I guess the question is whether Senna can convince the GT300 field to not fan out so much so he can get by. But a 1 second penalty, man, the GT500s are really going to excel once they've already got the power down. From a standstill, the GT300s almost have a leg up on the GT500s. I know in our testing, the GT300s were almost able to catch the GT500s before they were able to catch up to speed and then start taking off with their superior horsepower.
Let's switch gears into qualifying. Derek, what are your predictions?
From what I've gathered from talking to our drivers at JET and some of the other guys, our midfield times are going to be stretching through the kind of mid 21 area up through possibly the 24s. I'm talking not just Group A, I'm talking like the entire field for GT500. Pole time, well, from what I've been talking to Mitchell, FMS Center, for you guys that don't know his name, we could see possibly a low 20 this week. I mean, he'd really have to work for it, but I mean, we could possibly see a low 120 from him. For GT300 wise, generally they're about 10 seconds, 11 seconds behind. So for the midfield, I'm going to go probably 132 to 135, kind of that stretch area, because they're a bit more. Well, qualifying showed otherwise last week, but they're a bit stretched out as compared to GT500. And Paul, I'm going to say a low 31. Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with GT500. We're going to be looking at 20s, and if Senna just absolutely miracle lap, maybe I'm going to be the one that goes way too quick this week, but possibly a 19. I think that's probably just asking for too much, but I think it is at least on the table that he could do a 19.9 or something like that. We'll have to see how much he's pushed, but knowing that he outqualified everybody in the last one by practically a second and finished the last race with 33-second gap, I don't think he's going to be feeling too much pressure to really push the envelope. But he's got to be careful here because he really does need to establish pole if he doesn't want to start any further back than he already is. So he really does need that pole. And historically, he hasn't had the best track record with once he's got pole, keeping it. So who knows where he's going to be. But I think probably in the 20... mid 20s, maybe low 20s, and like I said, miracle lap maybe a 19.9. But I still agree right there in the 20s. GT300, talking to some of the guys that are setting the times, it'll be interesting to see what the Nissans can do here from RUK Shadow and from BTR McNish. It'll be really interesting to see what they can extract out of that, because there's that long back straight, isn't there? That's going to account for a lot of the lap, and then there's the front straight. So not quite like Motegi, but it certainly allows the cars to get to a much higher top speed than they could at Motegi. So I'm not sure really whether this is going to favor the F40 or not. I think this might be a little closer than it was at Motegi as far as lap times between them. But I'm going to say maybe RUK Shadow for pole here this week. And I think it might be a mid 130 for pole. And I think your middle of the field estimations are probably about right. 131s to probably 133s, I think, are what we're going to be looking at in terms of qualifying. Now, in the race, what do you think, Brad? Who's GT500 in the race? Who's going to take it here? Can Senna make it all the way through the field with a 1-second penalty and stay clean?
I guess that really is the big question here: is can Senna do that? Now if he can, he'll certainly get the win. Yes, but there's other people to think about, like how the Toyotas do and how will the Lexus do for GT500 wise. But something else to add to GT300, if Midnight Performance decides to change cars, I don't know if that's almost the right decision, because we found out at Motegi that the Weissman has ridiculous poles on the straight. It's got so much more power. It numbers wise it has the same power, but it's got so much more pull compared to the other cars, to where at a track like this where there's two long straights, I feel like the Weissman is actually the car to use, because there's not very many corners here. The grip sector is very short in compared to the straights. So I feel like the Weissman might do well if they choose to stay with that car.
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting move, but if they got to look at the whole season. I mean, this is kind of until we get to, let's say Suzuka, we're going to start looking at quite grippy tracks. I mean, after this we got Tsukuba. The GTR or the R35 and the Weissman are not going to have an advantage there at Tsukuba, and they're certainly not going to have it at Camino. They're not going to have it at Road Atlanta. Maybe on that long straight at Mugello Club, but I really don't think so. And then the British, at Silverstone, it's not the full track, so you don't get those long straights. But we should see more grip centric there. And then Suzuka would certainly favor the power cars because you get those nice long straights, the front run, you get the run down into Spoon, the huge straight there between 13 and 14 down into 130R. That's going to favor those power cars. So really there's 3 tracks that favor power cars and 4 tracks that favor grip cars. So I don't know. I have to say, if they're going to make a move away from the grip or from the power car to a grip car, this is the time to do it. Although, like you said, the Ascari.
Yeah, because
go ahead.
You don't want to. I mean, if they stay at even if they use the Weissman at this track and then switch, they just wasted a whole race's worth of points. If they switch now before the race, then they actually get the points for the race. So I guess it would be kind of stupid of them to use the Weissman here if they are going to switch cars.
I agree. All right, so what do you think, Derek? What's going to happen in GT300 during the race? Keeping in mind we've got grid penalties in place now.
Well, with the grid penalties in place, pretty much this is going to be the same deal with how Senna is going to have to react. Oh man, who was it? Shadow. Shadow is definitely, I apologize for that, the Shadow is definitely going to have to pay attention to what he does off the start, because one, he's going to have to let Senna by. If he doesn't let Senna by and starts jockeying with the rest of the field, he's going to, maybe you got to remain patient here with you got these guys starting from the back, these really quick guys. I mean, they could be the hero and go for it in the first corner, but that may they may overshoot it, they may do something wrong. So I mean, I would say take it with a kind of a bit of caution. If you see enough space on that start, if you're Shadow or Senna, especially if you're Shadow, because he's going to be jockeying with that whole field. Senna is going to be a lot quicker once they get towards the end of the straight. So Shadow is going to have a hard time, trying to make his way through the field. I mean, the GTR is quick off the line, but I mean, he's going to have to be very, very careful these first few laps, and he has to make sure that by probably he needs to shoot for at least lap 5. He needs to be in the top 4 at least, because then that'll give him a decent shot of making it towards the front of the field. Same thing with Senna. If Senna really wants to win this race, he has to at least make it probably into the top 4, maybe even the top 3 by lap 5 if he really wants to have a shot at the win.
And I think that's a pretty
as for
tall
the rest
order.
of the field, I mean, it's really, I mean, yes, you could make it towards the rest of the race, but if you want to capitalize on the beginning of the race, you want to capitalize on people not being in their groove yet. I mean, if you do your morning warm-up, if you do everything properly, you technically, with their speed, their warm-up is going to be a lot quicker than the average guy's warm-up speed. I mean, Senna's outlap is going to be Senna and Shadow's outlap, since they're decently quick. I mean, especially for Senna, his outlap is going to be much quicker than everybody else's if he is as quick as he says he's going to be this week. So he's going to have to capitalize on these very early laps when the rest of these guys are still kind of get a groove going. He's got to make sure that he's pushing hard and trying to get through that field.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up for this week. Be sure to tune in for qualifying. Go to Facebook and join the event for the Recaro Short Ring. We'll be live commentating on there throughout the qualifying period. Follow us on Twitter. That's twitter.com/Formula Forza or just @Formula Forza. And also like us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Formula Forza. You can also follow us on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Formula Forza. And on YouTube, you should be able to find our YouTube channel just by clicking the videos on formulaforza.com. But if you don't want to go that route, you can go youtube.com/Formula Forza admin, and you'll find all of our videos there. Thanks for listening, guys. Next week, we are off, so the week after that, we'll be preparing for the next race then, and that'll be at Tsukuba. So that should be pretty interesting, the race then for August 11th. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yep. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a nice weekend.
Yep.
Yep.
You couldn't have made that more awkward, could you?
He signs off with yep.
Come on.
It couldn't have been like, for my colleagues, Ryan McDowell and Derek James, this is Brad James signing off. Nope. He decided to go with yep.
What, like King of the Hill in here? Yep.
No.
Yep. No?
No, more awkward than that.
Wow. That's pretty awkward, then.
Like standing in the window at the mall looking at the girl at the counter just going, yep. That kind of yep.
The creepy one that makes you secretly pick up the phone and dial the mall security.
For them to come pick yourself up.
Again, you made it awkward.
Oh,
You're like the
jeez.
king of this.
God.
We know what award we're giving you at the end of the season. Most awkward podcast.
It was Captain Practice, now it's Captain Awkward.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, guys.